there's a soul on the other side of that business, and they're having problems at home, problems with their body, problems with their spiritual connection, everything. And that ultimately is going to resonate inside of their business. So no matter what kind of Band-Aid or help I give them in their business, there's still an individual that needs to be addressed behind the scene.
We are so excited about this podcast. We have Joshua Jones here from the Ignition Movement, the founder. And man, it was so great. We were on a call with a bunch of people. And when we had a quick little session that we were talking, and I was like, man, you have got a passion to speak, and I've got to get you on the podcast. So I'm really happy to hear you today and let the listeners to listen to your message. So thank you very much for joining us. Yeah,
thanks for having me, brother. This is exciting.
Well, the first thing that I have to say that was great was, being able to, first of all, bond on one of the things that was my most important thing, which is martial arts. And I know you had the Krav Maga experience and a little bit of the jiu-jitsu on the go. And so talk to me a little bit about, what brought you into that and, about your martial arts journey, we're going to say.
Sure. Yeah, martial arts has always been a thing for me. When I got into Army, well, obviously I liked Bruce Lee when I was a kid, like fucking rock star. This guy could do some massive stuff. Him and Chuck Norris and these guys were like kind of idols back when I was a kid. So I'd always try this stuff out, wind up smashing myself and I need to get some training. Well, I wound up going to the Army.
Did you have the nunchucks? Everybody had the nunchucks.
Yo, I got nunchucks. I got nunchuck like nightmares.
Everybody takes it to the nuts one time, right?
At least once, 7, 8 times to the dome. Definitely.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah. But I got in the Army and I learned judo, and that was cool. So I started really getting this idea of body mass and leveraging and being able to posture. And so, yeah, that's what spurred everything for me, actually getting some training. And then when I got into the Krav situation, I had my kid, my stepson, he's 13. He had been in Taekwondo, black belt, badass motherfucker. Not really. But, the kid could do some stuff.
It's a beautiful, Taekwondo can be legitimate as a martial art. There's people Absolutely. In MMA who are, have a Taekwondo background. And when they use it, in tandem with wrestling or in tandem with something else, it's a beautiful martial art for sure.
Yeah, I watched Joe Rogan beat the shit out of a bag with one of them side kicks. I'm like, fuck, man, that is power and massive power. Now, he never got that route, and I never got that route. So then we dicked around with Krav, and that was cool because now we're into some actual applicable stuff. And then, of course, our instructor was like, hey, look, you guys need to get down and roll. I'm like, okay, fuck it, let's do it, man. Let's get down and roll. Absolutely. And I won't go down all the story, but it's fun. It's
exactly. Fun. Well, you learn a lot about proximity. Is one of those things, right? And proximity, it's funny. That's one reason my wife won't train jiu-jitsu is she says it's way too much proximity violations.
Right. Absolutely.
But the thing I love about jiu-jitsu though is that, from a competitive standpoint, you can go full tilt and one quick tap or one quick verbal statement and it's all done and you reset and you go again. And so you can have maximum violence with maximum control. And that's what I think is so beautiful about jiu-jitsu.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of the men's movements right now are all about the capacity for violence and the ability to actually moderate that, and self-control is kind of universal concept of you got your shit together. So I love that. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And the thing is, it's for example, I own a mortgage brokerage and I run a consulting business. And with my mortgage brokerage, we had this one client call us and she called me up specifically and she said, she says, is this Steve? And I said, yeah. And she said, you are a predator to young women. You are, you only care about money. You only care about yourself. And, and she went on about 5 minutes about how, I was just basically the demon of the world. And, so my response to her was, and this is where, I think jiu-jitsu comes into play. My response to her was, if I was in the same situation as you, and I felt that somebody was a predator to my daughter, put my daughter in a position of risk because they, were a predator because they were only cared about themselves and all these things, I'd be doing the exact same thing that you're doing right now. So your daughter should be thankful for having somebody in her life like you. That's amazing. And so, Exactly. And so it went on for about 45 minutes, and her husband tried the same thing, but I just agreed with him all the time. But that came out
Mm-hmm.
of not only some training with Grant Cardone, but it really also came out of jujitsu. Because the thing is
Excellent.
if you fight fire with fire, like I have a guy who just joined the gym he's 24 years old. Dude's jacked to the nines. He's about 220 pounds. I'm only 180 pounds. I'm almost 50. And I gotta roll with this guy to show him that jujitsu works. And that's like a hell in a handbag to deal with that if I'm trying to fight strength with strength, because there's no way I'm going to be able to do it. So I just fight strength with water, and then there's no way that he can fight that, and it becomes so much easier. So I think jujitsu and having that ability to be to instill maximum violence in your mind, you can do it with like absolute confidence, and that confidence then takes away the emotion out of things. So
Absolutely.
you're like, cool, this is sweet. I'm just relaxed. And meanwhile, they're like, because they've just
Exerted
completely everything went into that last 30 seconds. Now they're done.
Now they're done.
Now you talk about the men's movement and that sort of thing. Talk to me a little bit about. So you were in the military. You were in you said the Army. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then when did you get out of the Army?
I got out of the Army back in '99.
99. Great.
Yep.
And well,
So
and then
right before
although
all
I'm
the
from
shit kicked
Canada,
off.
even though I'm from Canada, I'm still going to say thank you for your service, because I think the American military is responsible for service around the world. So
Through that.
yeah, big time. And so after you got out, tell me about a little bit what happened afterwards. What was your journey?
Well, my journey was really about establishing myself as a man, or at least what I thought it was a man at the time. Right. It's like, all right, we'll go get a wife and have some kids and start a business. Like that was my entire concept of a man. And it really wasn't from my examples. It was really from just my own personal development. Right. I'm reading these books. I'm looking at other examples because my dad really wasn't in the picture. He didn't even know his dad. So as far as a male example, really didn't have that. So it was like a fictional piecemeal together from all these different guys. So that's where I was at. And I did that in Georgia. I had a great time with it and fantastic. And then I took this real dip into faith and shit went sideways fast. Like you find out, well, you married for the wrong reasons and it was all about the sex and all of that. And so understanding I wasn't even really showing up as a man, wasn't really showing up as a husband, as a dad. And all of these things really started to weigh on me and break me apart. And so I sat in a space like, fuck, what do I do now? And all of a sudden, these little beacons would start to pop up. These men, they were like, fuck that. It's time to stand up and be a man. You can't play around with this. And I'm like, ooh, what's that? Tell me more. I need to know what this is because I have capacity for violence. I have a little bit of self-control. But, I was sitting in addictions back then. I'm drinking. I'm lying to myself. I'm dealing with porn. I'm dealing with gaming. I'm like sedating all over the place. And so I had no concept of what it was to really walk in truth and own my own shit and become responsible. And then I heard Jordan Peterson's voice. I don't know, it was like 6 years ago or something. Like, fucking Peterson, bro.
Speaking from above, AKA Canada.
For real. Yeah. And he's just like, no, and all of that. I don't do that shit. Like,
I like how you throw the Kermit voice in there. That was
yeah,
that was fantastic.
Certain phrases man says, right? Just like ring.
Oh, they do. They do. Yeah.
That tipped me on the journey to actually figure out what the hell I'm here to do. And I think that's what most men are really after, right? It's the idea that you're put here, you're divinely inspired. It's not some accident you came out your dad, with your dad and mom. Like all this shit was pre-planned. There's something way above this that's orchestrating things. And it's just a matter of coming in alignment with that and then fulfilling whatever it is that you're particularly put here to do.
Well, one of the words you used in that I thought was really interesting when you talk about all the different things, whether it be video games, porn, the drinking, all those things, was you use the word sedation. And I found that as a very interesting term. And I think, talk to me a little bit more about what your perspective is on that.
Sure. So there's this idea that there's a veil that sits around us that keeps us from the truth. And it's the truth, the concept that the truth sets you free. And so there's this veil that sits between you and the truth, preventing you from that. And so whatever that is, I classify that as sedation. Sometimes it would be like I got sedated with yard work. I'd rather go do yard work than take responsibility for the shit I need to own today. I'd rather go watch some TV shows and I'm going to get into the sports thing and I'm going to go in over here and, whatever it is, smoke some weed, do some dope, whatever, like I'm going to go over here and mess with these chicks. Like, it could be anything, right? It could be, I'm going to go and get on the computer and just start looking around at stuff. It's just something that's hindering you from actually sitting in the facts, the reality of where you are now, and being able to actually analyze what you actually want, like the fact of what you want. Because I don't know about you, but for me, it's like I never really knew what I want. I just like throw some shit at the dartboard. I'm like, man, I'm going to go for that. Like, shoot for the moon, and or shoot for the moon, and that way you won't hit the ground.
Absolutely.
You're going to hit something up there. But this idea of being able to acknowledge where you are, so the sedation sits like this veil where you never acknowledge the responsibility that's lacking within one's life.
And I love that as a concept, because I know when I look at my development and the way that I've kind of grown up to be the somewhat of an adult that I am today, I use an asterisk because I think there's still a little kid in me. But when I talk about the idea of, back when I also used to drink like a fish. And, and then, thank God for jiu-jitsu, because, when I started jiu-jitsu, I was 240 pounds. I weigh about 180 pounds right now. So I lost, significant amount of weight. I don't drink anymore. I mean, maybe I'll have like one drink, in like a season. That's about it. But I really have no tolerance for it, because it doesn't help me get to my objectives. Right. And so, the idea that you're right, that those things are distractions from the truth and distractions from your goals. One of the things I love about Cardone is, Cardone has this saying. He says, success is my duty, my responsibility. And I think that's something that is really, really important for people to think around, that it's not an option. And in fact, he goes further to say that if you are not successful, you're actually being greedy, because you're robbing the people around you from the success that you can make for you and for them. And so you're when you go out and you do all those things that are antithesis to your success, or as you say, they pull you away. Those are the things I think that, you really got to rip out of your life,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What was, like some of the things growing up, the peer pressure, like what was the biggest thing you experienced that you had to rip out of your life?
Well, for me, it was booze. I mean, that was the number one thing and it wasn't even a peer pressure thing. I think I found so much joy in socialization. And the problem is socialization invariably always went with alcohol. Right. And so if you went to a party and you're the person not drinking, you're kind of like the weird guy, and you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll drink, and I don't need it to go do stupid things. I can do stupid things. I can dance on a table like anybody else, whether I have a drink or not. But, it's one of those things where you just kind of have it because it became part of it. And then you tell yourself all the things you like about it. Like I love the taste of craft beers. Like I just love the bite that they have and everything like that. But I don't need the alcohol to make, the thing come together. And one thing that I think is really interesting about modern society, and this is actually a good movement that's happening in modern society. Like I went out to a pub it was about a week and a half ago, and the person I was sitting with ordered a beer, and I'm like, and I looked at the menu, I was like, oh my gosh, they have non-alcoholic beer here. Sweet. And on tap. So you're like, I can get non-alcoholic beer. This is fantastic. And so to me, it's like, then I can have the flavor. I mean, it's still going to get the calories. I'm not so happy about that, but I don't need to have all the other impacts that alcohol brings. So, I think that was probably one of the biggest things to take out of my life was that. And I'm so happy about that. So
it's awesome, brother.
The other one I think is a really good one is video games, right? I think video games, I lost a lot of friends to, do you remember when Warcraft came out? Warcraft was the killer of so many friendships and so many relationships because it was so pervasive and people would just, they had their addiction factor just dialed up to 100. And, and so, I played that for a while and then I kind of realized hunting boars is just, to get your +5 sword or whatever the stupid thing you're trying to get, your purple armor. And then next week they're like, now purple armor is not cool. You got to get the red armor or whatever. And you're like, oh my God, I got to hunt more boars. And so, the perpetual nature of mediocrity in that game was something that ebbed at me. And I was able to break away from that one pretty quick. But I had a lot of friends who, they lost their businesses. They lost their girlfriends. They lost so much to those kind of environments.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a very fun thing to see in the backside of that.
So when you came out and you're like, okay, this sounds really cool, and you've got your mindset fixed. Talking about Jordan Peterson, we also talked
Mm-hmm.
about, I think it was the warrior movement. I think that you're a
Yeah.
part of. Talk to
Wake
me a
Up
little bit
Warrior.
about that.
Yeah. Wake Up Warrior was big for me. I have this deep inside of me, this alpha male that wants to come out because I'm also a yellow type personality and I have a people mastery skill and I have this communication gift. It all just resonated with me. I saw this guy on the stage. I think it was the Funnel
Yep.
Hacker, Funnel Hacker Live. And it was fantastic. Like he just got up there and he just like poured his shit out. And I was like, oh, that's me. I'm like, dude, I tell on myself all the time. I talk to these younger guys. I'm like, listen, let me tell you a story, brother. And all of a sudden they're like, dude, that's where I'm at. So that exact thing happened to me. And it was cool because I'm like, this is what I'm doing is I'm in this process of waking up. I was in my second marriage, 8 years into it. I had no idea that like my wife was getting ready to leave me. And so give you a little context to this. At the turn of last year, from Thanksgiving to Christmas, I wind up doing a 30-day fast. And I come up with some religious background reasoning for that in the last 23 years of my growth spiritually. But I came to this place where I'm like, I need to fucking change, or God, you need to take me out of here because clearly I'm not getting this shit done. Like, I need to know what it is I need to do. And so at the turn of the year, I got this like flip, and all of a sudden this operating system is here. It's like, you're a fucking liar. And then I hear this guy from the stage say, you're a fucking liar because I'm a fucking liar. I'm like, whoa, dude, that's it. I'm a liar. And all of a sudden shit started to crumble. And I'm like, okay, this is the process of waking up. Like, you wipe your eyes, you get all the junk out of your eyes, you blink. It's like, fuck, give me some water. Like, this is the process of waking up. And then I begin to understand, like, the reason I could never achieve that trajectory, like he points out, like, you need a map. You need to know where the fuck you're at. And then when you know where you're at, you can look up and go, okay, well, that's where I want to go. Just like when you're sitting there prone, right? You have a position, just like BJJ. You got to know the position you're in and what your capability is from there. And then you know what your objective is. You have to know where you are in order to even plot your objective.
Well, I
And
think
so without that,
yeah, and I think you hit a something really important in saying that you have to have a map. I think,
yeah,
in the military or in jiu-jitsu or anything, that people will always operate on their lowest form of training, right? And if you don't train and you don't have that plan that has a plan A, plan B, plan C, you don't have option A, option B, that kind of thing built into your map, you're going to fall to pieces. And I think,
definitely.
that is something that is extremely important in martial arts, in relationships, and in business.
Absolutely. Mission critical, in fact. Yeah, that's
Yep.
one of the beauties of being and the irony of it, of course, coming from a military background. Like, dude, I know this shit. Like, why I've been doing it. And that was part of this wake up process that took place. So, yeah, he took me down this journey and, I went all in on it. And I understood for the first time in my life that I also am to become an example. And that all the talking and all the speaking, all the bullshit coming out of my mouth means nothing compared to the massive volume of my action.
Yep.
And that's where I got the value out of that movement. It's been great. I actually became a certified trainer out of that, and that spurred me into a pivot in my business into coaching.
That's
Because
fantastic.
yeah, man, it's like I'd sit here and fucking fix people's businesses, 1,000% increase in their traffic, this, that, and the other thing, and all of a sudden it would crumble. And I'm like, what's going on? And I never realized, just like me, there's a soul on the other side of that business, and they're having problems at home, problems with their body, problems with their spiritual connection, everything. And that ultimately is going to resonate inside of their business. So no matter what kind of band-aid or help I give them in their business, there's still an individual that needs to be addressed behind the scene.
Yeah, there was and that's very powerful. And I agree with that 100%. I was in I think it was I don't know if it was Keller Williams or it was a conference I was at, and they were talking about, the individual element of the business, the personal element of the business. And he said, they were just kind of going on talking about, market stats. I think it was a real estate one. And they're talking about market stats, and they said, big thing that's happening as we move into this year, there's going to be a lot of divorces and blah, 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 blah. In fact, 50% of, marriages or whatever the stat was end up in divorce. And then he paused and he said, now, when you're working with your colleagues and your colleague maybe snaps at you, or your colleague doesn't, respond to you in the way that you think that they should, or something's wrong, understand that 50% of the people in this room are probably getting divorced right now. And so they're not talking to you out of the position of their business. They're talking to the position of one of the major pillars in their life is falling to pieces. and you don't know.
Yeah, heartbreaking.
It is. It totally is
But
heartbreaking.
fact.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, we're running an event in November coming up that's all about it's the 10X movement, and it's specifically around the 10X movement surrounding families, talking about, because I think the family's been under attack. It's been under attack for years and years. I think since you got to the dual income requirement to actually live in this world, that was the first breakdown of the family. And then every year there's something that ticks away at breaking at the family unit. And I think building up the power of the family unit is one of those critical things that I think is so imperative. And it sounds like that's one of the big elements of your movement as well.
Yeah. Actually, the fact that you say it that way resonates with me so hard, because I sat in a space in Florida before we moved to Tennessee here. And, I was having this spiritual moment with God. And one of the first, there's maybe a handful of times I believe that God actually showed up and spoke a word to me. And they're never like huge or long and not a long conversation necessarily. But this one was, get your house in order. And I thought I had my shit together then. We're 6 years married by that point. Thought we were doing great. Come to find out we're not. And like you said, it's so under attack that the attack is so pervasive and sneaky that you cannot deny the fact that you're under attack. And if you do, you're a fool. There is just no way. You have to know that you are in a war every day, and that enemy is coming to fucking take your wife from you, sever that relationship, put a wedge, make you angry at your kids, whatever, trigger you for whatever reason. And the more capacity you have as a man to stand in that gap and hold the space and just breathe, right? Like meditation, great thing. Save marriages all over the world if men would just learn to meditate. I mean, shit. But that's it, yeah. And so one of the four pillars that the Wake Up Warrior movement also, and the Warrior Trainer program is all about is, body, being, balance, and business. And that balance aspect is so pivotal that it's like it could tip the entire table.
Oh, absolutely agree.
In the mortgage industry and real estate.
Yep. Yeah, it's fundamental. When I look at another big training organization that I really respect is the Keller Williams training organization. That's a real estate company. And that's one of the things they talk about. They have this thing where you do this 4-1-1 when you're looking at your goals and that sort of thing. And you have to put down your goals that are personal. You have to put down your professional goals, your family goals. You put down everything on the thing, because if one of those pillars falls, everything else is going to go.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. We think of it like a table, right? I'm not going to go crazy flat earth here. No, I'm just kidding. But the idea of a table, you get wobbly in that table or chair, you go to sit in that chair and you can't get comfortable. it doesn't work.
Yep.
And so
we use that in jiu-jitsu a lot, right? You're going to take away one of the legs, right?
The points, all points.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Totally agree. That's amazing. So, and actually it's funny. I think I watched the same presentation on, I love Russell Brunson. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
He's just the coolest dude. He's so, well, I mean, I don't know him personally, so I love him at a distance, but he seems so authentic. He's just he's a wrestler too. So, he's a grappler at heart, which just puts him in the right category. And, as you can see, I've got all of his books.
Yes.
I did the classes and that sort of thing. And that's where I saw the Warrior movement. And yeah, he was impactful, man. He was good. I loved it. That was a very good component of the ClickFunnels Training Academy, was having him on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a neat, the little synergy that they have. And, again, I'm not trying to get all religious with this, but the fact that they would both come from like a Mormon background, and this idea that like they want to bring the faith into whatever that faith they have, obviously into all the areas of their business and their being, everything that they do. And it's like, this is this idea of doing versus just talking about it. I love it. It reminds me of the church. Like,
absolutely. I think lip service is one of those things that is, and I'll get a little, probably political on this. This will be the most political I'll ever get. But, when we talk about the dedication of land, that kids read at school every day, we are in the land of the whatever tribe it is. And because of the treaties of blah, 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 we stand here. The land belongs to them. And I'm like, well, if we're going to keep on talking about it, let's just give the land back. Because if we're not going to do anything about it, why are we talking about it? We're actually building into our psyche that talking about is enough. You know, like there was a Louis C.K., and he's a very polarizing comedian, but he had this one, you know, a bit that was on, you know, he's on a plane, right? And he, you know, because he's making so good money, he sits in first class, right? And he looks back and he sees the Marine who's sitting back in coach. Thinks, man, like I should really give my seat to this guy. This guy's given so much to the country. I should really give my seat to him. And then he pauses, and obviously he's a comedian. But I'm not going to, right? Because I still want to sit in first class. But because I thought about it, you know, that makes me feel good, right? Because I went through the thought process of that I was going to give. I'm not going to, but because I went through the thought process. And I think, you know, that sort of lack of follow-up with action, you know, is sort of starting to being built in the DNA of the modern person, that they can give lip service to something, or they can donate to some charity and then that's enough or whatever. And, or they'll run their little marathon to support, you know, whatever, breast cancer, but they're not going to take a step further to do something more involving. And so
Yes.
that's, I think is a big thing that needs to change. You know, as people look, because there was a great saying, that it said, you know, people fall in love with a plan, but they despise the execution of it. Right.
Oh, yes.
And I think it was Chris Williamson who actually then said the second half of that one, which went something along the lines of, you know, the magic that you're looking for is in the work that you're not doing.
Yeah.
Right. And I was just like, man, that is, I love that quote from him so much. I had to look it up, and that's where I got the first half. And I was like, I think he should have said it, both of them together, because it's packaged so well. But, you know, I'm not, far be it for me to tell him how to do his job. He does a great job. So.
Absolutely. Well, that's the beauty, right? Is all this intellectual property goes out there, and it's the ones that add the value, and they're not trying to copyright things, right? So you can take and mash up together and piecemeal everything together for each situation. Every situation is unique. Everybody's got different experiences. Yeah. Like one for me that resonated was be the change you want to see.
Yeah.
Right. Like, well, child, I want you to be quiet. How about you be quiet? Ooh, shit. Okay. Hey, woman, I'd like you to be a little more obedient. Oh, why don't you be more obedient? I'm like, oh, fuck. and like all of a sudden, there's a moment to pause and be like, and that's why Two Posts has actually become the example as we pivoted the business this year. It's like, no, this isn't about just helping other people. This is about you actually becoming the example. Because if you can do that, all these actions that you are taking are going to just speak volumes above everything else. Then people are going to be like, hey, how'd you do that? Now, all of a sudden, your word is a seed that's planted inside of some fallow ground that can actually come and bring forth some fruit.
And that's an interesting statement, because that's something that I always wonder about when it comes to coaching and when it comes to leadership. And I think there's like, to be the example, you've got to be able to show the example, even if it's through a different lens. And what I mean by that is, one of my favorite coaches out there is John Danaher, right? So he's the coach for jiu-jitsu. He coached George St. Pierre, who's one of the greatest of all times in MMA. He coaches Gordon Ryan, who's the best jiu-jitsu player on the planet. And I'm not saying that John Danaher is not good at jiu-jitsu, but there's many people who are, you know, A- B level jiu-jitsu that if in a tournament, they would beat the hell out of John Danaher because he's got some fit mobility issues and he's older and that sort of thing. But what he said is, and he said it very well, is he said, you know, the athlete's job is to be so self-absorbed into their own ability to perform that they have no room for other people. Because if you want to become the top of 1% of the 1%, you have to hit that as a goal. And now, whether that be in your marketing, because let's face it, if you don't have people watching and nobody cares, but also in your actual craft. And that's why Gordon Ryan is so great at this. But John says then, as a coach, you have to be so selfless in everything that you do, because you have to, your mission is for that other person to be successful. It's not about you. It's not about your goals. It's not about anything. So you're not performing at the same level as they are in their craft, but you're performing at the highest level in your craft, which is coaching.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where it's at.
John Danaher is so cool, man. I don't know if do you listen to him at all?
No, I haven't.
Throw him on your list. You will love John Danaher. Yeah.
Awesome. I'll check him out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to say, if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you? Because I think that's really important. You brought such a great message. You've got such a great story and your perspective, man. We are so aligned on so many things. I love it. How can they reach out to you?
Sure. Well, just go to the website. We've got ignitionmovement.com. You can take a look there, take a look at the challenge. But as far as actually like getting in touch, just to have a conversation, I create space to just have a Zoom meeting, have a little one-on-one, see where we might have some synergies, where you might have some questions you want some answers to or whatever. Then you can go to twopostllc.com/Zoom and find something that fits for your calendar.
And is it TWO or do you spell it differently?
TUPOSLLC.com/Zoom. Beautiful.
That sounds great. Awesome, man. And you talked about a challenge. What is this challenge? Just to, that's the last thing that sort of piqued my interest there. I mean, not that there's other things we can talk about, but you threw that in. I want to flesh that out.
I appreciate that. Yeah, this is pretty cool because this is where everything starts for me. I was, when God was dealing with me about this pivot, it was like, what do you really want? And I'm like, well, I'm not after the money. I'm after the impact. He said, good, do it this way. And so he showed me this funnel, and this top level of the funnel is a challenge. It's very simple because it's hard to wake up, right? The concept of waking up, admitting the fact that you're a liar, admitting the fact that you're not doing what you were called to do, that you're not operating in your potential. Like, these are hard pills to swallow. So I issue the challenge. It gives men a 30-day window where they can come in. We have weekly calls. They'll have access to the tools and the warrior system and all of that to be able to come together, and they'll get real good on-demand training with live training as well. And we'll basically walk them through that process and give them the space. So they're going to be able to operate inside of 30 days, get 30 days of coaching emails, get all of this stuff wrapped up in a nice bow for $297 US.
That's fantastic.
And if
you do the coaching
at the work, what's that?
Is the coaching at 4:45 in the morning?
No, it's not at 4:45 in the morning, but it should be. No. Right now we're North America, so thankfully I'm actually doing it midday right now. So it's Mondays, middays is the challenge coaching. Nice. But there's on-demand coaching you can pick up in the morning and get after it. And, of course, emails anytime. Yeah. So if they'll do the minimum work and they don't see massive improvement in their life, I'll tell them to take their money back. Like, I don't care. I don't want you to move forward with me. That's it. But you'll have the opportunity to come in here and actually take a run at this and this waking up process. And then we go on further from there.
That's amazing. I love it. That's so huge. I love, I love when people can actually commit and just get on it, yes. That is so huge for me. We've seen it so many times in businesses that we've coached, seen it so many times in jiu-jitsu where, we had one person who lost I think it was 80 pounds, wow. In less than a year, 80 pounds. And just you could see in his face, you could see it in his persona, you could see in everything, his confidence, everything just shifting. And that was just so, so incredible to see. So incredible to see. So, the idea of impact, I think, is really important. One of the things that, I talk about, because people always talk about money in sort of a negative, and they talk about impact. I'm like, yes. The best way to create the biggest impact is financially. And the reason why, if you don't have any financial inertia behind you, your level of impact is going to be smaller. Yes. Like if I said, for example, to somebody, hey, why don't you take your whole family, your grandma, your parents, your nephews, everybody, and just go on holidays, pay for everything so they don't have to. Mm-hmm. Right. And if you can create that kind of impact in your family, imagine what you could do if you had even more resources. Absolutely. What kind of impact you could build a school somewhere, you could build a program for something. So, yes. That money is not a problem. Money is a tool. And money is only used, it can be used for horrible things, or it could be used for absolutely beautiful things. And that's up to you as the user to figure that one out.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a horrible stigma growing up with this idea that money's horrible and bad, and anybody that has it's like the devil, and like this is just crazy shit.
Yeah, that had to be, I had to actually purge that out of my mind, because yes. That was something we were taught when we were younger too, that, it's be happy with what you have. Money is the root of all evil, that sort of thing. And purging that out was the best thing I've ever done. Yeah. Yeah. Well, man, Joshua, it was so incredible to chat with you. And you guys, everybody go to ignitionmovement.com, get your challenge started. I think that's a fantastic start to kind of get your mindset right and get on top of those things that are holding you back, guys. So really appreciate you on the podcast today, and look forward to chatting with you again sometime soon.
Yeah, thank you, brother.
Maybe we'll get a roll in. Yeah,
that virtual roll at least.
No, man, I'll come down to you.
Oh, you come on down. I got this. All right, love you, brother.
Hey, man, likewise.
Deuce.